Hi, and welcome to Back to Hoops. I'm Dan. Today we are going to be talking about some coaching questions that we've been sent via Facebook. Obviously, just so you know, you can always keep sending those to us, and we'll get around to answering them at different episodes as well. But as always, I'm joined by the fountains of knowledge that are James.
Hello.
And Jay.
Hello.
Fantastic. So let's get straight on with it. I think a lot of people have been asking these questions. What sort of stuff can we be doing during this lockdown to train both beaters, chasers, skills? Maybe some people are on their own as well. What can people be doing?
So I'll go first and you've got some afterwards. So I'm one of those. I don't necessarily have someone that is keen on training and doing ball sports and stuff. So what I've been doing in isolation. I also don't have a garden, which doesn't help with that. So what I've been doing is going to the local park just down the road with a ball, not with a broom, just with a ball. And I've done a mix of stuff. So things that you could do are things like ladder work. You don't need a ladder, just use some sticks or some big stones to work on my agility, running through the gates. So each 2 feet in, 1 foot in, stepping across, stepping back and forth. Like you can see on our driving video, which will be linked later on. Working on changes of direction and speed, so mimicking some stuff from the NFL Combine, the 3-cone agility runs, where you literally just work on changing your direction and speed, L running functionally. That's all stuff you can kind of do by yourself. In terms of throwing mechanics, there's very handily a little target, which is about my head height on one of the walls. And so I've been throwing my quaffle at that from various distances, trying to get in sets of sort of 10 or 20, and then either changing the distance or changing the angle and still trying to hit that bullseye. Just so I'm always throwing at appropriate heights. You know, it's either one of the hoops or, you know, where I'm actually aiming on somebody. So even though I don't have anybody to throw it at, it's still giving me that. And that's kind of the fundamentals of my game. It's throwing it and running with it, and that kind of covers kind of both those bases. It can be beater specific as well if you want to be trying it for that. Obviously, you're throwing maybe at a lower down target. So if there's markings you can aim for lower down, throwing your budget at that, again, trying to do it from different angles, different distances. Something that's possibly also worth trying is turning and throwing. So facing away from your target, picking up your ball, spinning on the spot and throwing. So you get used to making those quick beats that you would be making if you were trying to throw behind the hoops or a recovery beat. So that's kind of the stuff I've been doing in isolation for a while, and I think it's been helpful. It's just kept me a little bit sharper than I would otherwise have been.
Cool.
Yeah,
Jay?
I can only agree with all of that. I think the main thing is get out there and get throwing the ball. Any ball. It doesn't have to be a quaffle. It can be a tennis ball, a cricket ball, you know, a basketball, a rugby ball, American football. It doesn't matter what you're doing. You just need to be out there throwing in some way. The thing we'll notice when we come back from lockdown is, yes, some people's fitness might have got better, and I'm sure all those press ups and all that running you've been doing is great. But the core values of the game still need to be there. You still need to be able to throw. You still need to be able to catch. If you have got a friend playing catch safely, obviously, it can be fantastic. And I agree with James, throwing at a target is the way to go. I have my own target that I have. The one thing I will say is training on your own can be really boring. And that's what puts a lot of people off. It isn't necessarily the stuff they need to do. Because I'll be honest, throwing at a target for 3 hours is really good. You're going to get really good at hitting a spot. But it is quite dull. So either get someone out there with you, or take some music, or take a podcast, or take an audiobook. But drawing an X on a wall and trying to hit that X from various angles, throwing while you're running, throwing from, you know, different areas or different types of throw, that's what you should be working on. Because a good throw is going to save you in most sports 9 times out of 10. So that, I do think it is the emphasis. Any throwing you can be doing, get out there and do it.
If you've got it, try and bring a couple of balls. You don't have to go fetch it every time. It's like you're throwing into a net most of the time, Jay, so it like kind of stays. Have to go get it and retrieve it as a faff. And that's actually where, for me, the boredom creeps in. It's getting the ball back. So if I have a couple I can use, that's helpful. I also try and do the same set thing. So if I'm practicing my overarm throw, I'm going to do that 10, 15 times and then swap it up so I can actually try and evaluate how I'm doing it. So if I just keep swapping in between, yeah, it's breaking up my focus a bit, but also I'm not necessarily getting better at it because I'm shifting my focus so often. Something I have tried to do as kind of like a little project to do with Back2Hoops is setting it up so I'm filming myself doing it. And then there's some really good free video analysis, video software, editing software you can use. The one I'm using is called Kinova. And that lets me actually just review how I'm doing. I can put it side by side. You've seen it for some of the videos we've used. But yeah, being able to actually break it down has been really good. Another less athletic, I guess, thing you could be doing in this time, which is still Quidditch helpful and will help you when you get back, and kind of links onto Jay's idea of the fundamentals, is reviewing footage, both of yourself and of other teams. Like, you've got a lot of free time now, most of us. I know I certainly do at the moment. So using that productively to look at how and why certain things were working, I can do that now. I don't have to worry about marking 90 books or that essay that's due in a couple of days or whatever your life issues are. You have more free time on the whole, so use it.
Something I would say as well, if you're working out alone or doing fundamentals alone and you're finding that it's basically too easy, you're hitting the target too often. There's a drill that I started doing based off some stuff I read, which is stick on a pair of headphones and you can find loads of like ambient noises on Spotify or like distracting noises, or if you're struggling to find that music you hate, and try and do the drills to that, because it will distract you. And if you're trying to emulate pressure, a crowd, a situation you don't like, there's noises like that which will stimulate your body in that way. And if you can, make those shots, make those throws when your mind is trying to be distracted, then that really helps you out for a game. If you want to start off easy, there's just some crowd noises on Spotify you can use. But if you really want to push yourself in creating a pressure scenario alone, there's some quite unpleasant noises that you can get to come through your headphones, which is quite a good way of making sure that you stay focused.
That's a nice way of summing up our podcast thing, Jay. Some unpleasant noises you can listen to. Yes.
I was just wondering as well, because obviously, you have a coach in your team, in your club. You could video yourself, maybe send them the footage, as obviously I did with you, wasn't it, James? Even before lockdown, just to sort of get their advice, their opinions. Obviously, you can compare it to our earlier video as well, I'm guessing, and you can sort of put them side by side as well.
I think it's one of those things, like, everyone puts off stuff because they don't have the time. It's now that time factor has been removed as an excuse for a lot of people, not everybody by all means, but it's now what you do with that time that you've been given. And if this is something you want to get better at and want to put effort into, there are lots of things you can do. You've got to make the start. The first step is the hardest, and hopefully the habits keep on going forwards.
Brilliant. Okay, so I think this is one that we got sent on Facebook. How do you pick who the coach should be for your club, for your team? What do you think are the best ways to decide who the coach is?
Do you want to take that, Jay?
Okay.
Yeah, I think it really depends on what you're trying to do with your club. And it depends how you see your coach and the relationship with the captain. Obviously, your coach should be someone who has a very good grasp of the tactical knowledge of the game and can apply it. It's no good having all of this knowledge if you have no idea drills or ideas to put it into practice. So the first thing you're looking for is sort of a person who has a good tactical knowledge and can apply it to drills, but also it's got to be someone who's keen to learn. The best coaches in any sport are always trying to get better and are always looking for new ways and new ideas to enhance the team. And those ideas aren't always going to work. I've had ideas before that I thought were really good, and they've completely fallen apart. But then again, I've had ideas that I thought were really good, and they were really good. So it's about being willing to experiment and try things out. I think with your coach, it doesn't have to be someone that everyone likes, but it does ideally have to be someone that everyone respects or can get the respect of everyone. And it's down to the coach to try and garner that respect by being respectful, but by also behaving with some authority. It doesn't have to be your best player. Good players don't always make good coaches. Historically, most excellent coaches weren't great players. James is obviously the exception.
Thank you.
But if you look at most sports, the best coaches aren't always the best players. So don't immediately look to your best player to be the fountain of knowledge. There's some players on Team UK who are absolutely fantastic, who I would not trust to coach if my life depended on it. So you need to look for who's, immersing themselves in the game, who's trying to learn, who has new ideas, and who's applying new ideas. The coach's job's really tough because it's not just teaching people, it is being a mentor, it's being emotional support, it's balancing ideas, it's balancing egos. If they're a really good people person, that helps in the same way that you can have your captain, your coach, relate in that way. So if one of your coaches maybe has some fantastic ideas but isn't a people person at presenting them, your captain should be someone who is a people person, who is super social, who can help to present those ideas. It's a tough question, but it's got to be confident and is always trying to learn. James?
So I different opinion on that slightly, not massively, obviously, because we got along on kind of those last few dynamics. In terms of how you select them, I have always been on teams where they've been voted in by the group as a whole. I don't always think that's the best idea. As Jay kind of said, I don't think the coach needs to be the most personable person on their team. I know for a fact I'm definitely not. So voting can lead to it just being a popularity contest, which isn't always helpful. So what I much prefer, and if I had complete control over everything, as I often aim to try and have, I would have the previous coach essentially shortlist people they thought was good, with input from other people, but essentially a shortlist first, and then open the shortlist up to the wider group. So that either way, whoever gets picked out of those 2 or 3 people have a greater chance of being competent, even if they're not necessarily the most liked person in the group. As Jay says, they don't have to be the best player. They do need to be respected, and you would hope that that process helps with that to a degree, because they're being endorsed by someone in theory that the group does respect in terms of being their previous coach, and they respect that person's opinion on essentially the successor. I'm not saying that's without failing, like it can obviously fall apart a little bit, but I don't particularly like just a straight up vote for everything.
I think what a lot of clubs, especially uni clubs, fail to understand is how hard it can be to coach straight from being a player. So if you were just a player the previous year, and then you're suddenly in charge of the entire tactical nuance of the team, that's such a difficult transition, especially if your team doesn't have lots of leaders that can support. And I think sometimes the coaches just need to be honest and say, for the first 3 months or so, everything we try isn't going to work. But either we're doing it to learn together, or we're doing it to pay off. New ideas very rarely work the first time you do them, depending on the environment. So I think it's down to making sure that your coach needs to be resilient as well. I think that's something that's really sort of glossed over, is how resilient in all sports, but especially Quidditch, the best coaches are. Because if your coach is going to have their confidence knocked by a couple of remarks, that's going to be really detrimental to the team. And obviously for new coaches, that is going to affect them to start off with, which is why you need all that support. But you can usually tell if someone's sort of got the stones for it going forward. So in the past, myself and James have definitely had, a lot of flack put our way for either how we coach or decisions we made. But you've got to be able to not ignore it. You've got to be able to accept it and move forward. And that's what a good coach is going to do. And that's what you should look for in this type of person. You can be annoyed about something in the past, but you've got to learn to realise why it's happened rather than just staying annoyed, I think.
Okay. I feel like we're sort of on the cusp of the next question. It's just talking about, someone had asked about coaching styles. So how you'd actually would approach, depending on the experience or the sort of types of people that you've actually got that you will be coaching.
So
I think once again, James, you go first. You go first, James.
The joys of doing so for Zoom. In terms of stylistic changes, I don't think it'll be a massive surprise to people to think that I would prefer a slightly more autocratic system of coaching. I think in general the coach should be the final say on what's going on. They need to have in their mind their plan, their vision. They need to have ideally a good idea of how to execute that plan, despite potential upsets. A lot of the times, and through personal experience and through seeing it in other people, a lot of times a plan is put forward and the first question or the first point that anybody raises is, what about this incredibly niche example where it won't work? And it's like, that's great. Thank you for your input. We will come on to that. But for now, let's just focus on the main bit of what we were trying to do. And that's much easier if you have a tighter control of the ship to go, this is what we're focusing on. We'll deal with the other issues later. Otherwise, you never move forward. I think sometimes coaching by committee, in terms of like lots of different people having their say all at the same time, is detrimental to efficiency of use of time. That
obviously ties in with you having your clear vision, your clear goal, knowing where you want to.
Exactly. Yeah. For me, the way I kind of like to run it is, because I'm ultimately responsible for what happens, I should have ultimate say in what does happen, in how it works. I like to put set aside a time for people's input, and it's something I've told the people I've been doing level up coaching with, is having your training plans and stuff up early, like on the Wednesday before the session on the Saturday, and giving them time, the player-based time to talk about it, ask their questions there, get any discussion they need or any input they want on it. Then before the session starts, that gives the players a little bit of ownership. It gives you a chance to see whatever issues are going to come up. But it also means when you get to the session, everybody's on the same page as you, and we just get through what I want to get done. Because they've already had their time to discuss it. They've had their time to ask their questions or make their little petty points, if you want to be less polite about it. And then you just get on with it. And your use of the day or the session is way more efficient. So yeah,
is that pretty much how the UK sessions go at the moment then, Jay? Or
so I'm gonna agree with James, but I think add a different spin to it. I think what a lot of people get wrong when they think about it being one person making the decisions is it becomes some sort of medieval dictatorship where sort of the mood is low and no one has any say and it's grim. And I think that's really the wrong way to look at it. Ultimately, if I'm the coach of the team, I am right. If I tell you your tackle's too high, your tackle's too high. If I tell you the ball speed wasn't quick enough, it just wasn't quick enough. And I think you can have how I see it is you have a coach, but that coach empowers leaders within the team to help lead. For me, you need a coach that has the final say, but the best coaches make themselves defunct. You need core leaders within your teams. They don't need to have official roles or fancy titles, but you need leaders that you can rely on that will support you and help see your vision through. And that's what I try and do with the UK. I like to think personable guy. I think a lot of the players that I like coach me. There are a lot of people that have very strong opinions of me. But I will say almost everyone that I've been on a team on or coached has really enjoyed having me on their team or being coached by me. So I think that alone shows sort of what I'm striving for, is you're about empowering your own players. And I think this is where the relationship with the captain is incredibly vital. Your captain is your number one leader. If your captain disagrees with the coach, there is an incredibly high chance the team will side with the captain. The captain's definitely going to be one of your most respected players and one of your most socially influential players. So the coach and the captain need to have this relationship where the captain doesn't need to have any tactical say, but the coach says, I'm trying to do this. You need to help me achieve that together. What can we do for these players to achieve that? Because your captain should know your team better than most people. And it's the time there for the captain to say, coach, I really like your ideas, but I think if we approach it this way, it's not going to work with this person. Or if we try this tactic, that's great. I like it. I'll go with it. But I don't think it's going to work for this set of players. I think myself and James have had the captain-coach dynamic and the coach-assistant-coach dynamic for 4 years-ish now. And that's sort of how we go off. Like, it's about getting the leaders out there to see the vision through. Just because the coach is making the final decision doesn't mean conversations can't be had. And conversations should be had, but people need to appreciate.
Jumping very quickly there, I do think, I don't disagree, I think that's worked very well. I do think those conversations need to be had not at the session, unless something specific has properly come up. Like, oh, we've actually worked out, we've done this 4 times now, and actually we realise, no, it's not working. So the stack idea we had last year for Team UK, that didn't end up working. But on the whole, that discussion is somewhere else.
Yeah, so I agree. I think the coach-captain discussions or the coach leadership discussions, I completely agree, James. I just didn't say need to happen on their own. The worst thing in the world, and we've had it, not with each other, but we've both seen it and we've both been a part of it, is when the coach says something and the captain or one of the leaders of your team directly challenges while it's being explained, because it splits the club instantly. If James says, it will go to a parallel universe where this would happen, where we're at Raptors training, James says, we're going to do this idea, and I pipe up and say, that is garbage, that's never going to work. You're immediately splitting the club, because I like to think I am a leader within Raptors. James definitely is. People are going to pick a side immediately, and that's not what you want. What you want is you want to allow the coach to have their time to explain, and then if you're a leader who disagrees with it, pull them aside and say, Coach, I don't think this is working. There's a good chance your leader's going to be wrong. And you say, I get that, I understand, but we're going to give it a go and see if it works. Okay? The coach has the overall say, but you still need to have the illusion of a democracy. Okay? People should still feel like they can have an opinion, and people are allowed to have an opinion. But if everyone has an opinion that matters, it will fail, because no decision will be made. Yeah?
I think I had some sort of lovely bro tape with my thoughts on that on it somewhere. Maybe I'll wear it for a session.
But it is really tough. And finding those leaders as a coach is the first thing you need to do. Identify the influential people, get them on side. Say, I'm looking to you this year to help steer this ship. I need you on my side. You're going to be a person of influence. Because the last thing you want is one of those leaders who thinks you don't think anything of them and then goes off on their own little tea party, and it can fracture the club somewhat.
Okay, so you've picked the coach. You are now the coach. You've decided your coaching style based on the people you've got the captain. Now, how are you going to pick your play style for your team?
Have you heard of run it in a straight line, Dan? Because have I got a tactic for you? I'll start, James, then you can. Sure. I'm sure we're going to have very similar opinions on this one as well. You've got to see the players that you're looking at and their capabilities. Loads of coaches, I describe a team like a puzzle. Loads of coaches try and make the picture that they want with the puzzle pieces they're given, regardless of what colour they are. Okay, if I've got the puzzle pieces for a car, I'm not going to be able to make the Mona Lisa. I'm just not going to be able to. And the same goes for coaching. There's no point trying to play a drive-heavy game if you don't have the personnel on your team to do that. Okay? And I think it's about seeing what your players are capable of, both athletically and tactically, intellectually, and tailoring it for that. I think that's really, really important. Knowing the strengths and weaknesses of your team and playing to your strengths. A lot of people identify their strengths and weaknesses and then try and remove their weaknesses immediately. And at the highest level, that's great, but your strengths are strengths for a reason. You need to play to your strengths, okay? And just try and nullify your weaknesses. So it's about having a look at the players you've got, their capabilities, play styles that you've seen, and then try and accommodate it for that. On offense, it's basically, are we going to try and run it in, or are we going to chuck it about and then try and run it in? Okay? Defense is about how technically nuanced you want to be. Are you going to go back to our earlier video about compact defense and chuck that in because all your players are new and morons? Or are you going to try and do something a bit complex because they've got a higher, athletic IQ? So I think the key thing is tailoring it for the players that you've got in front of you. Because at the end of the day, they're the players that are going to go out and represent your vision. James?
Sure. So I kind of agree to start with. At the end, I think the defense thing is slightly different. So definitely you have to look at your player base first. You have to have analysis of your player capabilities. As Jay says, there's no point trying to do one thing if that's not the suitability of you've got. So being honest, both as a player in the squad and the coach, about where you are at and what you are capable of doing. Now, that doesn't mean you have to have a 10 out of 10 stat. Okay, so if you're a new team, if you're a Dev Cup level team, you're still going to have a style that is more suited to your capabilities. So you're still going to have something that is better than the rest, even if you're not playing at that super high level. So finding that out first is key, and then matching it to a style that will work. So you've got a lot of fast runners. You can run the fast break off, and let's play to that. I've got someone who can really chuck the ball really well. Let's use that. So that bit's pretty straightforward. Where I think the next bit of that is that can only take you so far. You need to be looking at building in either a plan B, or so in case that first plan doesn't work. So you've played to your strengths, you've done that, you've picked it. How can you start in your training sessions to build in a variation? Because otherwise you are just going to come up against people that are either better at your thing and they'll beat you, or you'll come up against someone who is the opposite countering style and they'll beat you. So you need to have some degree of flexibility. You want to hone your skill, but you need to have a backup. Sorry?
So I do think it is worth saying when you're thinking about this, you have to think about if your players can cope with that.
Yes.
As a coach, it's really easy to have super high expectations. I know I've been guilty of it before, where I've sort of held everyone to the same standard of what the game should look like that I've held myself. And as Facebook has pointed out, I do think that I am an expert in the game, swanning around with my knowledge. And maybe not everyone else is at that level. But you need to, if your players don't understand, that's not their fault.
I agree.
But then surely within that, now, sorry, I was just going to say in our last video, when we talked about lines or pods, obviously have a different style. So you can almost then, if plan A is, say, your drive heavy style, instead of those people having to switch in terms of how they play, you just switch the people. So
I'm thinking more about, I agree, I'm thinking about a smaller team, which doesn't necessarily have that flexibility. Yeah. But what I mean is more, so if your team is more set up to play a run-it-in physical game, right?
Guilty.
That's fine, right? And if your team is quite small or quite new, the ability to fully shift to a LQC style, ping it around the pitch, passing isn't going to happen. I can appreciate that. But your plan B, or the thing you should be building on, is if my primary driver gets stuck and stops repeatedly, what am I going to do? So then you're looking at just the one pass out, either dishing it to the hoop, to a secondary runner, so you don't have to completely stylistically change. but you need to be able to evolve and adapt what you're currently doing to move forwards. On defense, I do think it is quite a bit different. Sorry, Dan, I will let you go in a sec.
Yes.
I think all the defenses are actually pretty easy on paper to get, as long as you show people and work it out. It's not like man coverage is not hard. You stick with the person you're on. Zone coverage isn't that hard in theory. You just stay in your spot. We're all very good at staying on our little bubbles at the moment. We can do that. 2-2, again, isn't actually that hard. You stick in 2 banks. So I think because the nuances of it, obviously there are nuances, but because the gist of it is quite simple, picking a defense that is going to be more useful and more effective against your expected opposition is better. So if I'm playing at Dev Cup, I want to be playing a zone defense way more often because I'm expecting the other team to try and run it in. So I want a defense that sets me up to stop them running it in. If I'm expecting to play a team, if I'm a much better team and I'm expected to play a weaker team, then I might want to shift to a man coverage where I can just exert whatever dominance I can get across the pitch. So I'd rather pick my defense based on what I'm expecting to see, because all of them are quite easy in theory. And if you drill defense enough, regardless of what you pick, you'll get it. I would suggest.
I agree. I still think that we're, especially in the UK, guilty of this as well. Only moving into like fluid defenses that have the ability to change from game to game, let alone within the same game.
I'm not suggesting changing in game. I appreciate that's too difficult.
Oh, you would say game to game.
I'm not even suggesting that. I'm suggesting at a basic level, rather than going, I've got players that will play this defense style well, because all of the defensive styles can be played pretty easily. You pick the one at the start of the season that you're going to drill. Your primary defense is the one that's going to be effective against your expected offense. I think that's much easier to do.
I'll remind you that every defense is pretty easy when we have that first Raptor trade.
I said in theory, and I will be just as disappointed in the Raptors when they fuck it as I will be in anybody else. Trust me.
Okay. So, all right. Seeing as you brought it up and talking about the trainings, timing of drills, we've had a question on. I'm going to give you an example because I'm conscious we're running out of time. I just want a quick answer from
Part 2.
You have set up a fantastic drill. Let's say it's for the
classic
corner with absolutely no defense at all. And every single time your team runs it, they don't score with no defense. How long are you going to keep running that?
How can I imagine that world? It's so... Oh, wait, it happened to me in March.
That is a toughie. So before we get on to this, I will say the thing that I find with most Quidditch players is their attention span for drills is non-existent. That even the best players get bored of repetitive drills. It's one of the big changes I made with Team UK is sort of accommodating for the mix of personalities that were there. And you should try and do short bursts. I think 20 minutes for a drill is more than long enough. And once people have nailed it, you've got to change the scenario, but that uses the same skill. And I think that's a mistake a lot of coaches have, is that they do the same drill for an hour and a half and expect it to do something or achieve something. You've got to do the same skill for a long time, but do it in lots and lots and lots of different drills is what I'd say to do. Because
I think that's a really good idea, that is.
Yeah, thanks, man. Cheers. So the example I'll use is if you go back to our offense, the round the corner stuff, fantastic, great way to attack. If James makes me do that with 2 people from one side in the same situation for an hour and a half, we'll be sick at doing it in that one scenario. And then if we go to any other scenario or any other situation, we're going to be useless. Once people have got it and you're confident they've got it, you need to then use that skill in a different way. Even if it's only altering it slightly, you've got to make the offense or the defense think. Make your players think, make them engage in the drill. Because I've had it where I've had to do drills for ages and I've been bored of it, or I just switch my mind off and I go, well, I can do this now. And even if I mess it up, I did it right before, so it doesn't matter. You've got to constantly be engaging and changing the scenario for people once they've got it. Only once they've got it to do it. Because if
So-
they can't do it at a basic level,
They're not good at it.
maybe you need to refine the skill that you're doing somewhat. One could argue.
The way I like to do it is within the session. So I go for a 30-minute block. And that includes explaining and up-leveling the drill. But I like skill progression within the thing. So my drill might be very basic to start with, because I want to make sure everybody's got the core mechanics. And then the complexity or the intensity of the session increases to try and build up to a more game-like situation. So that allowed by adding in more defenders, adding in less space, more options, whatever it is to basically build up to a full half court. And that moves on. If sometimes in the example you gave, which is entirely hypothetical because no one would be able to fail 80% of the time scoring against no defense. No one would do that.
No one.
Obviously not. In that instance, actually making it harder ended up making it more successful because it meant people were more focused on what they were doing because it was more game-like. And that did help. But you need to have planned what your progression is looking like. I've said it before, I've said it in the session video that actually went out today. I like 30 minutes of activity that builds up from basic introduction through to it, and then you apply it to a short situation. That can be half courts, that can be 6-minute games, whatever, but you've applied the skill to a situation and see actually how you do it. 'Cause there's no point being able to practice it ad infinitum and then fuck it the second it becomes a match. That's how I
think one of my favorite bits of when obviously I started training with you guys was we obviously do the drills all sort of in the morning to start off with, and then we were doing this setup, and you went, oh, you've got to do this, and it was exactly the skill that we were practicing earlier on. I was like, oh, so I know how to do that, and now I'm doing it in the game in the game setup, and it just made sense to my brain. I don't know if other people work.
It's like Jay said. I think of it honestly like I think of the teaching kids or any lesson. You share your objective. That's it. You demonstrate a model. You let the children practice it in a safe environment. In this case, it's doing the drill, and then you apply it to the game, like doing the test or whatever. And if you follow that cycle, you can build up and build up and build up a whole bank of stuff. What you don't want to do, as Jay says, is you don't want to be doing English all morning, all day. That's dull as shit. Like, even if you're good at English, if you're good at the throwing skill, you will get bored of it. So short attention span burst is helpful.
The one thing I will say, coaches out there, if someone is making the same mistake, do not scold them. You need to tell them why they're making the mistake. The amount of games I've been at where the feedback given is, you got to be catching those. We're all very aware that they've got to be catching those. That person knows they need to catch the ball, yeah? You need to tell them what mistake they are making. If you don't know, ask them, because chances are they know. The ball came too quick. I was a bit late getting there. I really struggled to catch it. They'll tell you what they need to work on, but your feedback needs to be, this is the mistake you've made, and this is how we're going to improve it. Because telling me I should have made that tackle is useless. I know I should have made that tackle. So it's no good telling someone that they missed the tackle. They know they've missed the tackle. What you need to tell them is why they've missed the tackle. What could they do? What was wrong with their body position? Okay, the feedback you're giving needs to be constructive. Just raising that they've made an issue doesn't achieve anything. It's okay to raise an issue as long as you tell them how they can make sure they don't make the same mistake again.
Cool. So I've put a lot of thought into how to do that, because my instinctive judgment is to go, it's everybody's just catch it, throw it, run faster, whatever the nonsense jokey answer is. But it is obviously people's first reaction. And so both in my teaching and in my coaching life, I've put some time into how to actually answer and give feedback more constructively. And so you can find this PowerPoint that I'm showing now on screen on our Back2Hoops website and thing, which I'll come to in a sec. But essentially, your feedback, when you're giving it, needs to follow these 4 things. If you're saying something to a player from a position of authority about their playing, it needs to cover these 4 things. It needs to be focused, it needs to be specific, it needs to be constructive, and it needs to be actionable for it to be feedback. Otherwise, you're just having a go. Okay, so it needs to be focused on the situation, what actually has happened. It needs to be specific to that person or small group and not a generalization. It needs to be constructive, and that there needs to be something there to it. And it needs to be something they can then go away and fix. Right, so it needs to be something they can take an action to fix. And if you're not giving those 4 points, you're not giving feedback, you're just having a go. You're just using somebody else's oxygen.
I'm always trying to get better.
Hello, Alexa.
My Google Home thought you were criticising them, and it has said, I'm sorry, I'm always trying to get better. So it's good to see my Google Home is coachable. I rate that. Well done you. Well done you.
Yeah. Yeah, these 4 points: focus, specific, constructive, actionable. Make a mental checklist when you're talking. If you want to review your conversation afterwards, but otherwise, yeah, it's pointless.
Cool. Lovely. So I think we're going to leave it there, just for the questions. This is the end of part 1. We're going to do another, obviously, a second part, as we did in the last question and answer video. Just while we've got it up there, that is our new website. It's live now, is it, James?
Ooh, it is. You can find it. Back2Hoops.com.
Wonderful. Yeah. So do you want to show us some of the pages there?
Sure. So this is your home page. While it always works, Dan, it's well put together, is what it is. So this is.
While you're showing it in the background there.
Oh, I see.
This is the internet, Dan. Okay. Do we need to go over that bit again?
So this has got all of our video resources you can find, deep dives, quick looks, all these kind of things, where you can find a link to a video. It's got the video link to YouTube. It's got the PowerPoints we've been using, so you can download them yourself from Google Drive, and also links to the other videos that are related to that topic. The other thing you can find on our website is our written articles, which cover some topics in more in depth. So we've got our first few up there, one written by Jay, and then a glossary of terms as well. And you can also find links to some of the other projects that the UK are doing. So these are other coaching things that would be helpful. So you've got things like links to All In, so you can find out more about them and how they are trying to change the game. We've got Total Quidditch for some analysis for the UK, and we've got the Midline, a US channel run by Ethan Stern. All of that is on their links to their respective places. And the other big thing is it has information on how to sign up and what is Level Up. If you want to take your coaching further, you've heard some stuff you want to talk about in these videos and you want to learn a bit more. That is our lovely Back2Hoops website. Go check it out.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Thanks very much, guys, and see you next time.